Yesterday, CDPR was at Digital Dragons and they were joined by Mike Pondsmith. Pondsmith is the creator of Cyberpunk and has been working very closely with CDPR to bring his world to life. He also seems to have revealed a little bit more about Orion, again. A few months ago, he confirmed Morgan Blackhand is alive, and he teased that we will be leaving Night City in Orion. Well, yesterday, he confirmed that. Here's what he says.
Big partnership, and you talked in detail how you work with CDPR, just like we're talking right now.
Yeah.
So obviously they are working on Orion, but are you as involved in Orion as you were with 2077?
Probably not as much, but that's partially because, one, I have somebody to help me. We have a designer on our crew, and Jay is the guy. You know, he talks to the CDPR guys as much as I do. He talks to Patrick every week. So that frees me up to do a lot of other things. And one of the things that happened was I ended up being the person who inherited Witcher when Cody, who is the designer for Witcher, went over to Shadowscar, which is his current new project. So I'm not as involved directly, but I see the scripts. I see, last week I was wandering around talking to different departments and seeing what they had. Like, oh look, this is the new cyberware. What do you think? Yeah, that's pretty good. That that works here. Or I spent a lot of time talking to one of the environment guys, and he was explaining how the new place in Orion, because there's another city we visit. I'm not telling you any more than that, but there's another city we visit, and Night City's still there, but. I remember looking at it and going, yeah, I understand the feel that you're going for this, and this really does work. And it doesn't feel like Blade Runner. It feels more like Chicago gone wrong. And I said, yeah, I can see, this working. So, it's not like every day, although, Patrick and I talk a bit. We talk less than we used to do because he's got twins and has no time at all. But I know what's going on pretty much most of the time, and what I don't know, I go to Jay and I say, so Jay, what are you planning to do here? So like he's working on Night City 2045, and he talks to Patrick and the other teams to make sure that 45 ends up being Night City in 77 and beyond. And then, he and I go over stuff, and I go, well, yeah, you want to do what? Yeah, okay, we can do that.
Okay, thank you for that.
I love that it looks like Pondsmith had a little oh shit moment when he realized what he said, but yes, this is new information about Orion. So we will both be in Night City, but visiting a new city, which I think a lot of people really expected anyways, but the way that he says it's more like Chicago that walked the wrong direction, are we just going to Chicago? We know the backstory that Chicago was hit by plague after Arasaka and Militech essentially blew the city up during their war. They released a virus that swept through the city, and majority of the population was killed or people left. Chicago would become barren, and not much is known about its reconstruction. There is a little bit of a backstory, but essentially they have a blank canvas to make Chicago however they want. And I do have a video about Chicago and everything that we know about it, so if you do want to check that out, I can give you some more information, but maybe this is how they introduce Morgan Blackhand, who Pondsmith already said has been traveling outside of Night City, and he's been building his backstory leading up to 2077. We also know that in 2080, the maglev system finishes its route to Chicago. But if not Chicago, where else could the maglev network take us? I'd assume anywhere we would travel to would have to be connected to Night City directly, since we are again going to be in Night City. The original maglev network connected to Kansas City, St. Louis, Atlanta, Washington, D.C., but NightCorp has begun creating a new network since the original one was destroyed. If Orion takes place further into the future than just a few years, they could easily say they reconnected the network or even connected brand new cities. The possibilities with just the maglev network are kind of endless. But if we don't travel via network, then could we just travel by road to nearby cities? Maybe that's another possibility too. I still think that we're going to end up being in the NUSA. But whatever happens in Orion, we are for sure seeing Night City again, but we're also going to be leaving Night City. And Night City too will probably be improved upon. There were places that were cut, and as of right now, we know that Jay Gray is working on connecting all of the different maps leading up to 2077 so that they all connect. Maybe we'll see some of the cut areas put back in, or maybe we'll see some of the city shifting around for them to accommodate whatever changes they're making. And maybe in the future, based on 2077's endings, we'll see a time jump in everything with Arasaka and Militech and the NUSA with Myers, and how all of that shaped Night City's future. Aside from Orion's future destinations, Pondsmith also said a few other interesting things. He talks about something very interesting regarding Johnny and Rogue.
Johnny was making amends for all these things he had done, and he didn't want to admit it, but he's kind of going, yeah, I was kind of a dick, you know. And, you know, he had to, it's like the date he goes on with Rogue, where he's got to, you know, go back and work it out. And in our cosmology, one reason he left was he got Rogue pregnant. And so, you know, basically, there's all this back history. And then when Alt gets kidnapped, he goes to his old girlfriend they left who was pregnant and says, I need you to help me rescue my current girlfriend. I'm going, oh, wow, Johnny, you know. But it's very Johnny.
He says that Johnny left when Rogue was pregnant? So did Rogue give birth to Johnny's baby? Is Trace really her and Johnny's kid, not Santiago's? Honestly, that's a crazy possibility. I don't know if he was actually referring to what is canon, but now I really want to know. He also talks about Johnny's first story called The Punk and the Parking Space. And this is a story that he's spoken about in the past, but he's never really published it, and I think this is the most information he's given on the story.
How did Johnny start?
Johnny started as a short story that one of these days I may actually get around to publishing called The Punk in a Parking Space. Johnny has just gotten into Night City. He's in town. And he doesn't even have like a really cool ride or anything like that. And he's just like beginning his career as a rocker boy. He's gotten out of the military where he deserted. Yeah. And he's in bad stead with all the nomad clans that his old girlfriend Rogue is in. Mm-hmm. So he's alone. So Punk in a Parking Space, Johnny basically is about to park an old scooter of all things, you know, kind of not even a real motorcycle, more like a Vespa. And he's about to park, and this guy in a Porsche roars in and takes the parking space from him. And Johnny stops, and you have to understand, Johnny is somebody who is incredibly controlled, but people don't know that. Mm-hmm. They think, you know, he's wild, but Johnny is ice, you know, and he just doesn't show it. So Johnny calmly gets out as the guy is standing there kind of gloating as he sits in his Porsche, and Johnny takes out a really large silver handgun and shoots all 4 tires out. And he says, since you liked it so much, I thought you should keep it. And then he walks away. And that was the first Johnny Silverhand story.
This is very ice, as you said. This is
Johnny is kind of like, okay, dude, bam, 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 bam. You know, and it wasn't. That was the first appearance of the Malorian, mm-hmm. which is Johnny's. It's his sort of signature gun. Yeah. And Malorian had actually made Johnny a series of Malorian guns because as Malorian kind of realized, yeah, this guy really knows his weapons, and I'm kind of getting famous having this mm-hmm. rocker boy, you know, doing my guns. And so that was the first appearance of the Malorian, which in those days, it sort of looked like a Desert Eagle crossed with a heavy suppressed muzzle brake. Mm-hmm. The thing was huge, you know. And I liked the idea that he was in this parking lot somewhere. It was like, yeah. Damn! You know.
That's awesome.
And there's one more follow-up on it, which is that we later encounter the guy whose tires he shot out. and he happens to be one of the people who's a security chief in the Arasaka Tower during the fall of the tower. Okay, not the final fall, but when Johnny leads a mob in to get Alt out. And so that guy owned the Porsche, and Johnny's mob came through and killed him. Okay, so then the Porsche was kind of up for grabs, and years later Johnny bought that guy's Porsche and never put two and two together.
Okay, it all ties in.
Yeah, basically I have timelines of like all these people and what they do and all that. And yeah, Johnny bought that Porsche. So the Porsche that you see in '77 used to be Harada's Porsche, and I suppose if you really looked hard, you could see where Johnny's big gun blew holes in the tires.
See, this is interesting now.
So that is everything that Pondsmith revealed. But something that I didn't really like hearing was that Pondsmith seems to be less involved right now. Granted, he said it was because Jay Gray has taken a lot of the CDPR communications over, but my favorite part of 2077 is the way that it connected so intrinsically to the tabletop books, stories, and characters. And I really want to see them do that again, especially with how Pondsmith has recently spoken about Morgan Blackhand and others returning. But we also know that CDPR just moved into pre-production, so who really knows what exactly that they're doing. But this interview was pretty good. He talks about how the collaboration between him and CDPR started, and he talks about Cyberpunk as a whole. I'll link the interview below with a timestamp so you can check it out. It's about an hour long, so I definitely recommend watching it. But let me know what you think. Do you think we're going to Chicago? Do you think we are leaving the NUSA? And is there anywhere in the cyberpunk world that you want to visit? Let me know in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my channel members, thank you to my Patreon members, thank you to my YouTube members. Thank you all so much for your support. I will see you next time.